Welcome back everybody to the Cave of Bad Ideas, where we learn to do the right thing by sometimes doing the wrong thing. And once again, full disclaimers, I am not a bike mechanic. I only play one on the internet. So please take all the things we do in this room with a grain of salt. So what we're going to be testing here today is alternative forms of shifting. So what we've got here is a Barcon by Microshift, and it's their 11-speed shifter. And we're going to pair it with their 11-speed mountain bike rear derailleur that has capacity up to 46 teeth. So we'll see how that works first, try it both in index and in friction, and then we'll try this guy over here, which is a Gevenalle shifter. Interestingly, this one's actually only 10 speed, so we'll see if it works with this rear derailleur in friction, even though it's 10 speed and this is an 11-speed derailleur. So how did we get here? Again, we are on the search for the budget mullet, so some kind of road shifting configuration that will shift a wide range cassette. There is the official version by SRAM, but it costs well over $1,200 to pull off, if not more. And it's only electronic shifting. So I'm trying to see if we can do it on the cheap and in a mechanical way so it's more accessible. See, we're rocking the double handlebars, totally pro. I mean, this is what we gotta do since we don't have that GCN money. So I was successfully able to shift a Rival 1 rear derailleur with this shifter. It did shift the 50 tooth. It was a little bit rough without the wolf tooth. It did work with the wolf tooth, but it felt a little bit strained. So while it works, I would not recommend that. And in the last video, we tried this guy, which is the GX 10-speed derailleur. We found that it does indeed shift. And if you guys watched the 80s video, you know that there were lots of screwy comments. Let's say a lot of people recommending that I actually take the B screw out and thread it in backwards or any configuration of bodgy ideas. And my thinking is, while those things will technically work, quote unquote, they're bound to fail, and it's not something I can recommend in good conscience. You can do it at your own leisure, start your own YouTube channel, make that video, but I'm not going to recommend it. And lastly, a couple things. You will notice that I am using masking tape. Part of that is because I can't currently find my roll of electrical tape. But also, this isn't, I'm not going to ride the bike in this configuration. And this is way easier to remove and set up the other different shifting configurations that we're going to do today. So, don't use masking tape. Obviously, don't feel like you have to comment about it. I know it's not the correct way to do it. And another thing, in the very first video, a lot of people were commenting about the way my rear wheel looked on the stand. They're like, bro, there's something wrong with your wheel. There's a big bulge in your tire. Oh my God, don't ride like that. And that's because it didn't have any air. I just pulled out of the travel case and put up on the stand and made that video. So just chill, relax. So to hopefully stymie any of those sorts of comments, in this video, you will notice that there is no tire on this wheel. Yes, it's not rideable. No, I'm not going to ride it. This is just a work stand test. Just focus, people. We're talking about the drivetrain, not the tire, not the wheel. Don't be a dog chasing a squirrel. Squirrel! Okay, so with all that said, let's jump into the video. This is the 11-speed Microshift Barcon. They sell it in both a pair configuration, so you can run a 2x11 or something. This is just the single shifter. It can be set up both in index and in friction. There is something I'm trying here that's a little bit different that I personally have not done before, is you can see the routing of the Barcon. It goes straight from the Barcon and it follows the contour of the handlebar. So it goes under the tape. And this kind of routing is new to me. I know some of you have been doing it for years, since the 80s, whatever. When I personally got into touring bikes back in 2007, bikes that were outfitted with some kind of bar and shifter, the cables always shot straight out and loop back in. It opens up all this space here so you can run something like Fabio's Chest, a Bags by Bird bag, some kind of Swift Industries bag, without worrying about this big lazy loop in the front interfering with the baggage. I know on Twitter someone had made a comment about, well, doesn't this poke your knees? And I would say, maybe a decade ago, when we didn't have the option of wider handlebars with some flare, that was more likely. But now, that there are gravel bars or mixed terrain bars that are wider, push the bar end out, I actually think it's less likely, and it's becoming more of a viable way to shift again without stabbing yourself in the knee all the time. So enough talking, let's see how it shifts. Again, all this is within the capability of the system. I've got an 1146 Sunrace cassette in the back here. So I do have the 1150 Sunrace on this wheel, which we will try later. Just clicking through the gears. You can do multiple gears at once. Gets up to the 46, no problem. You can drop down to the higher gears really quickly. So this system is really elegant and something I actually kind of miss. So I know there are going to be lots of questions, lots of comments about, why not the Sunrace shifter, all that stuff. Why not a vintage shifter? I don't know if it would work with the modern day mountain bike derailleur. I did email Will over at Rivendell, asked him about their Rivendell shifters, if it would work with 11 and 12 speed mountain bike derailleurs. They said that they haven't personally tested it, although they recommend 10 and below and 9 speed is optimal, especially in friction mode. So this is, it's shifting pretty good. One click, one shift, multiple clicks, multiple shifts. So Microshift bar end shifter worked great with their mountain bike rear derailleur. So this would certainly be an elegant and inexpensive way to get kind of a wideish range cassette. Right, so the next thing we're actually going to do here is change this over into friction mode, and I'll try to kind of describe the experience of shifting it in friction. I know one of the concerns about friction as you have more speeds is that it's harder to get into gear. There's lots of chain rub or what have you. So we'll see how bad it really is. So to turn this over into friction, you merely loosen this end cap that holds everything together, and then you turn this outer ring. And then you retighten this guy, but not too tight, just enough to create the friction to hold the shift. So with that quick adjustment, we should be in friction land. So let's see how it goes. Okay, yeah, so no audible clicks here on this shifter, but still shifts okay. You can shift multiple gears, didn't even have to adjust the derailleur. So let's just go through the gears again. Again, it's super easy. I don't know if you can notice, but there's barely any kind of chain grating or anything. So I think, these fears of, inefficient shifting, of constantly rubbing the cassette are unfounded. I mean, you could throw the entire cassette, bam, one shift, and you're in your highest gear and you can outsprint Cavendish. Likewise, pretty easy to do multiple shifts into lower gears, throwing it, and there you go. Ready to climb that hill. So I'm actually surprised at how easy this is. Reading all the comments about, friction shifting doesn't work after 9 speeds, I would completely disagree with that, because this is actually pretty easy. I'm going to try to describe the feeling here. As you shift, it's friction, or it's non-indexed insofar as there are no audible clicks, but you do feel like this sense of tension in the shifter as it moves up or down the cassette. So there is kind of a tactile feedback when you're in the right gear. And of course, because it is friction, if you miss a shift just by a little bit, you can trim pretty easy. So let's do a bad shift. Okay, so bad shift, kind of rubbing, little adjustment, bam, no big deal. No big deal whatsoever. So my verdict is this combination in particular, the Microshift bar and shifter 11 speed, works great with their rear derailleur. I don't see why this wouldn't work with, let's say, if you had a Shimano derailleur or a SRAM rear derailleur, ran it in friction, it should work just as well. Okay, so we played with the Microshift shifter. Let's switch things up. I'm gonna do some recabling and rerouting here, and we'll come back and see how this 10-speed Gevenalle shifter works with the 11-speed drivetrain in the rear. So through the magic of the internet, I will do some recabling. All right, guys, so we're back. I recabled. You can see why I use masking tape. It's just easier to get on and off. And again, I'm going to point out some things. This is probably not the optimal cable line. Yes, I could shorten this. I'm not a bike shop. I don't have like a box of housing and cables, so I'm trying to reuse the supplies I have. So apologies if things aren't perfect. If you want things more pro, then definitely consider joining us on Patreon or sending us some housing or some cables. Just doing the best I can, guys. We don't have that GCN money. So if you've never used the Gevenalle shifters before, it's basically a Tektro Aero brake lever that has a Microshift shifter pod attached to it. This is an older one, so it's 10-speed. Like all Microshift shifter pods and Gevenalle, you can throw it over to friction, which is what we're gonna do. So 10-speed Microshift in friction, will it shift an 11-speed rear derailleur? And if it does, what's it feel like? Is it kind of bodgy, or is it like a legitimate shifting solution? I'm gonna go through the gears. So first thing I want to do is will it just get over All right. So it looks like even though this particular Gevenalle shifter has a 10-speed shifter pod on it, it's shifting 11 speeds just fine. In terms of the quality of the shifts, going into a harder gear, so working with the derailleur spring is super easy. You just kind of tap it over and it goes into that hard gear, no problem. So in terms of going up, you know, these early gears, not a problem. There is a little bit more resistance, I would say, than on this 11-speed shifter. Just a little bit more, not like a ton more. Something you could definitely adapt to. Okay, so that's a bad shift, but easy to correct. Just tap it with your finger. And on this system, you do get that, I'm gonna say it's a quasi-index feel, because it's not like you don't feel anything as you shift up. There is a little bit of a hump of resistance that kind of indicates when you're going into the next gear. So you're not just flying blind there, basically. All right, so I'm feeling good. So with these shifters, you can't really shift from the drops. For whatever reason, you do most of your shifting from there, then these aren't for you. But if you're like the majority of riders that ride mostly in the hoods, then you're good to go. So again, really super light touch going into the higher gear, because that's working with the derailleur spring. So working against it definitely takes a little bit more force. I'd actually be doing it like this. And usually, the way I like to shift with these is I'll do a big push like that. And if it needs some trimming, I'll just, you know, use these two fingers to go either back or forth and trim the rear derailleur. But for the most part, you can get in gear, you know, with a little bit of practice without too much difficulty. I'm going to say that this is a viable solution, even though it's 10-speed, seems to work with the 11-speed rear derailleur just fine. And this is something I would recommend in terms of a shifting combination. Granted, for all the tests so far, we have been just using the 11 to 46 tooth. Swap over to the 50 tooth where things will start to get bodgy, and we'll see how that goes. So let's do that now. All right, guys, we're back, and I have swapped things around. We have a different wheel here in the bike. This one does have a tire. It's inflated. Hopefully will meet your high criteria for what a tire should look like. Squirrel! On the stand. This wheel has the Sunrace 11 to 50 tooth cassette, and this is where things are going to get a little bit bodgy. I've not actually done this successfully. I do know I initially tried this derailleur last week without the wolf tooth, and it wouldn't get to the 50. So I've installed the Microshift derailleur with a wolf tooth road link. Hopefully it will get it up to the 50. I know that maxing out the B screw just wasn't working. And again, it's still connected to the Gevenalle shifter. Okay, so this is what it looks like in its highest gear. I think this is pretty, you know, decent clearance in terms of taking up chain slack. Let's see if we can get up to 50, guys. Yeah. So shifting pretty smooth. Again, this is a Gevenalle 10-speed in friction mode. So far, not a problem. Getting a little bit bodgy. Oh. All right, it did it. Let's try it again. So there, just throwing it right over. It's looking good. I'm gonna fudge with the tension a little bit here. They're a little bit smoother. So it's pretty smooth right there. Little gritty. My verdict is the derailleur does look a little stretched out a little bit more than I would like. So actually I think I'm gonna add a link or two and see if we can't make it look a little bit better. All right, we're back. I added another about 1.5 inches of link in here. So this still looks pretty good in its highest gear, I think. You know, so not super sloppy. Let's see if it shifts into the lower gear any better. All right, so I'm actually digging this. I think by adding that link, the derailleur isn't as stressed, and it's shifting generally pretty good. I'm gonna switch to a close-up so you guys can get a better look. Okay, so here we are in the high gear. I think this is pretty good in terms of kind of clearance here. Let's turn on the clutch, or the clutch has been on. So it's not too sloppy. I feel like this is taking up just the right amount of chain for the high gear. Let's shift into the low gear. A little noisy, but nothing that you can't trim out. So that's actually a pretty good shift. And there you go. So I would call this a success. Definitely looks a lot better with that extra link. So let's do a little bit more aggressive shifting. So bam. So this is about middle of the cassette to the lowest gear. Even just like throwing the derailleur around, it's not pretty, but it gets it in there. So again, pretty surprised. I did try this combination without the wolf link when I first got this derailleur, and it wasn't jumping up to the 50 tooth without a lot of chain rub, or without a lot of the pulley rubbing onto the cassette. There just wasn't enough room, even maxing out the B screw. No, I'm not gonna reverse it. But this combination with the Gevenalle 11-speed Microshift mountain bike rear derailleur and the wolf tooth, I would recommend. You just have to get the chain length just about right. This gives you a drifter that works with a mountain bike rear derailleur. So I know I can already hear the comments already. Why not just a tan pan? I'm working with the things I have, guys. I don't have any Shimano parts. I don't have a tan pan, so can't test those things. So what have we learned? A couple things today. That friction shifting is awesome. It still works, in my opinion, even beyond 9-speed. I think the complaints of it being difficult as you get beyond 9-speed are a little bit over-exaggerated. Like, I would have full confidence in running the system purely on friction. Another thing we learned is that by going friction, we can totally mix and match. You know, we're not slaves to kind of the arbitrary changes in cable pull that happen with index shifting. So if you're tired of that headache of mixing and matching derailleurs and shifters, then friction is a viable way to do it. Another thing that dawned on me in this whole process is this is why I like cable actuated brakes, because only with a cable actuated brake system could you so easily, you know, do all these bodges without having to deal with hydraulic fluid and rehosing things and everything. So the next thing we're going to test is using a SRAM NX Eagle rear derailleur. Yes, I ordered one. It was supposed to come in on Friday, got delayed because of weather. So you guys are going to have to wait till next weekend. But we're going to see how the NX rear derailleur plays with the Gevenalle shifter and the bar end shifter. I suspect it'll play okay. I'm curious to see how well that rear derailleur will work shifting the 11 to 50 compared to all the different bodges we've tried up until now. Maybe we can finally find a derailleur that we can use to shift this successfully without using the wolf tooth. If you guys want to catch up on this video series, check out the playlist over here. And if you like this content, let me know in the comments. If you want to help support it by sending us parts or helping us buy parts, definitely check out the Patreon and the PayPal link. And as always, guys, keep the selfless side down.